Learning refers to a relatively permanent change in human capabilities that include knowledge, skills, abilities, behaviors, and competencies that are not the result of a growth process. A key part of learning is that trainees commit to memory or remember what they've learned and can recall it. Transfer of training refers to trainees effectively and continually applying what they've learned in training to their jobs. Trainee characteristics, the design of the training program or what occurs during training, and the work environment influence whether trainees learn and use or apply what they've learned in their jobs. This figure represents a model of learning and transfer of training. As it shows, transfer of training includes both the generalization of training to the job and the maintenance of learned material. Generalization refers to a trainee's ability to apply what they've learned to on-the-job work problems and situations that are similar but not necessarily identical to those problems and situations encountered in the learning environment. Maintenance refers to the process of trainees continuing to use what they've learned over time. It's important to realize that for training to be effective, both learning and transfer of training are needed. It's a mistake to consider transfer of training as something to be concerned about after training because it deals with the use of training content on the job. Trainees' perceptions of the work environment and its support for training have likely influenced their motivation to learn and what, if anything, they have learned. Learning refers to a relatively permanent change in human capabilities that can include knowledge, skills, abilities, behaviors, and competencies that are not the result of growth processes. Verbal information includes names or labels, facts, and bodies of knowledge. Verbal information includes specialized knowledge that employees need on their jobs. Intellectual skills include concepts and rules, which are critical to solve problems, serve customers, and create products. Motor skills can include coordination of physical movements. Attitudes are a combination of the beliefs and feelings that predispose a person to behave in a certain way. Cognitive strategies regulate the processes of learning. Each learning outcome requires a different set of conditions for learning to occur. Reinforcement theory emphasizes that people are motivated to perform or avoid certain behaviors because of past outcomes that have resulted from those behaviors. There are several processes in reinforcement theory. Positive reinforcement is a pleasurable outcome resulting from a behavior. Negative reinforcement is the removal of an unpleasant outcome. The process of withdrawing positive or negative reinforcers to eliminate behavior is known as extinction. Punishment is presenting an unpleasant outcome after a behavior leading to a decrease in that behavior. For example, if a manager yells at employees when they're late, they may avoid that yelling by being on time. From a training perspective, reinforcement theory suggests that for learners to acquire knowledge, change behaviors, or modify skills, the trainer needs to identify what outcomes the learner finds most positive and negative. Trainers then need to link these outcomes to learners acquiring knowledge, skills, or changing behaviors. Learners can obtain several types of benefits from participating in training programs. The benefits may include learning an easier or more interesting way to perform their job, or job-related, meeting other employees who can serve as resources when problems occur, personal, or increasing opportunities to consider new positions in the company, career-related. According to reinforcement theory, trainers can withhold or provide these benefits to learners who master training program content. The effectiveness of learning depends on the pattern or schedule for providing these reinforcers or benefits. Similarly, managers can provide these benefits to help ensure transfer of training. Behavior modification is a training method that's primarily based on reinforcement theory. Social learning theory emphasizes that people learn by observing other persons, models, whom they believe are credible and knowledgeable. Social learning theory also recognizes that behavior is reinforced or rewarded tends to be repeated. The model's behavior or skill that is rewarded is adopted by the observer. According to social learning theory, learning new skills or behaviors comes from 1. directly experiencing the consequences of using that skill or behavior, or 2, the process of observing others and seeing the consequences of their behavior. According to social learning theory, learning also is influenced by a person's self-efficacy. Self-efficacy is a person's judgment about whether he or she can successfully learn knowledge and skills. A person's self-efficacy can be increased using several methods: verbal persuasion, logical verification, observations of others, known as modeling, and past accomplishments. Verbal persuasion means offering words of encouragement to convince others they can learn. Logical verification involves perceiving a relationship between a new task and a task already mastered. Trainers and managers can remind employees when they encounter learning difficulties that they've been successful at learning similar tasks. Modeling involves having an employee who already have mastered the learning outcomes demonstrate them for trainees. As a result, employees are likely to be motivated by the confidence and success of their peers. Past accomplishments refers to allowing employees to build a history of successful accomplishments. Managers can place employees in situations where they're likely to succeed and provide training so that people understand how to do it. Social learning theory suggests that 4 processes are involved in learning: attention, retention, motor reproduction, and motivational processes. Attention suggests that persons cannot learn by observation unless they're aware of the important aspects of the model's performance. Attention is influenced by characteristics of the model and the learner. Learners must be aware of the skills or behavior they're supposed to observe. The model must be clearly identified and credible. The learner must have the physical capability, sensory capability, to observe the model. Also, a learner who has successfully learned other skills or behavior by observing the model is more likely to attend to the model. Learners must remember the behavior or skills they observe. This is the role of retention. Learners have to code the observed behavior and skills in memory in an organized manner so they can recall them in appropriate situations. Behaviors or skills can be coded as visual images or symbols or verbal statements. Motor reproduction involves trying out the observed behaviors to see if they result in the same reinforcement as the model received. The ability to reproduce behaviors or skills depends on the extent to which the learner can recall the skills or behavior. The learner must also have the physical capability to perform the behavior or exhibit the skill. Learners are more likely to adopt a modeled behavior if it results in positive outcomes. Social learning theory emphasizes that behaviors are influenced, a motivational process will be repeated in the future. After observing the model and discussing the key behaviors, each trainee is paired with another trainee for practice. Each group is given a situation and a message to communicate. The trainees take turns trying to get their ideas across to each other using key behaviors. Each trainee is expected to provide feedback regarding the partner's use of key behaviors. The trainer also observes and provides feedback to each group. Before leaving training, the trainees are given a pocket-sized card with key behaviors, which they can take back with them to their jobs. Goal-setting theory assumes that behavior results from a person's conscious goals and intentions. Goals influence a person's behavior by directing energy and attention, sustaining effort over time, and motivating the person to develop strategies for goal attainment. Research suggests that specific, challenging goals result in better performance than vague, unchallenging goals. Goals have been shown to lead to high performance only if people are committed to the goal. Employees are less likely to be committed to a goal if they believe that it's too difficult. Goal-setting theory also is used in training program design. Goal-setting theory suggests that learning can be facilitated by providing trainees with specific, challenging goals and objectives. Specifically, the influence of goal-setting theory can be seen in the development of training lesson plans. Lesson plans begin with specific goals, providing information regarding the expected action that the learner will demonstrate, conditions under which the learning will occur, and the level of performance that will be judged acceptable. Goals can also be part of action plans or application assignments that are used to motivate trainees to transfer learning. Goal orientation refers to the goals held by a trainee in a learning situation. Goal orientation can include a learning orientation or a performance orientation. Learning orientation relates to trying to increase ability or competence in a task. People with a learning orientation believe that training success is defined as showing improvement or making progress. They prefer trainers who are more interested in how trainees are learning than in how they're performing, and view errors and mistakes as part of the learning process. Performance orientation refers to learners who focus on task performance and how they compare to others. Persons with a performance orientation define success as high performance relative to others, value high ability more than learning, and find that errors and mistakes cause anxiety and want to avoid them. Goal orientation is believed to affect the amount of effort a trainee will expend in learning, their motivation to learn. Learners with a high learning orientation will direct greater attention to the task and learn for the sake of learning, as opposed to learners with a performance orientation. Learners with a performance orientation will direct more attention to performing well and less effort to learning. Research has shown that trainees with a learning orientation exert a greater effort to learn and use more complex learning strategies than do trainees with a performance orientation. There are several ways to create a learning orientation in trainees. These include setting goals around learning and experimenting with new ways of having trainees perform trained tasks rather than emphasizing task-oriented performance, de-emphasizing competition among trainees, creating a community of learning, and allowing trainees to make errors and to experiment with new knowledge, skills, and behaviors during training. A need is a deficiency that a person is experiencing at any point in time. A need motivates a person to behave in a manner that satisfies the deficiency. Abraham Maslow's and Clayton Alderfer's need theories focused on psychological needs, relatedness needs, the needs to interact with other persons, and growth needs, self-esteem and self-actualization. Both Maslow's and Alderfer believed that persons start by trying to satisfy needs at the lowest level, then progress up the hierarchy as lower level needs are satisfied. That is, if physiological needs are not met, a person's behavior will focus on satisfying these needs before relatedness needs or growth needs receive attention. The major difference between Alderfer's and Maslow's hierarchies of needs is that Alderfer allows the possibility that if higher level needs are not satisfied, employees will refocus on lower level needs. David McClelland's need theory focused primarily on needs for achievement, affiliation, and power. According to McClelland, these needs can be learned. The need for achievement relates to a concern for attaining and maintaining self-set standards of excellence. The need for affiliation involves concern for building and maintaining relationships with other people and for being accepted by others. And the need for power is a concern for obtaining responsibility, influence, and reputation. Needs theories suggest that to motivate learning, trainers should identify trainees' needs and communicate how training program content relates to fulfilling these needs. Also, if certain basic needs of trainees, like physiological and safety needs, are not met, they're unlikely to be motivated to learn. Expectancy theory suggests that a person's behavior is based on three factors: expectancy, instrumentality, and valence. Beliefs about a link between trying to perform a behavior and actually performing it well are called expectancies. In expectancy theory, a belief that performing a given behavior, like attending a training program, is associated with a particular outcome, like being able to perform your job better, is called instrumentality. Valence is the value that a person places on an outcome, like how important it is to perform better on the job. According to expectancy theory, various choices of behavior are evaluated according to their expectancy, instrumentality, and valence. This figure shows how behavior is determined based on finding the mathematical product of expectancy, instrumentality, and valence. People choose the behavior with the highest value. From a training perspective, expectancy theory suggests that learning is most likely to occur when employees believe that they can learn the content of the program, expectancy. Also, learning and transfer of training are enhanced when they're linked to outcomes such as better job performance, a salary increase, or peer recognition, instrumentality, and when employees value those outcomes, valence. Most educational theories, as well as formal educational institutions, have been developed exclusively to educate children and youth. Pedagogy, the art and science of teaching children, has dominated educational theory. Pedagogy gives the instructor the major responsibility for making decisions about learning, content, method, and evaluation. Educational psychologists, recognizing the limitations of formal education theories, have developed andragogy, a theory of adult learning. Malcolm Knowles is most frequently associated with adult learning theory. Knowles' model is based on several assumptions. Adults have the need to know why they're learning something. Adults have to be self-directed. Adults bring more work-related experiences into the learning situation. Adults enter a learning experience with a problem-centered approach to learning, and adults are motivated to learn by both extrinsic and intrinsic motivators. Adult learning theory is especially important to consider in developing training programs because the audience for many such programs tends to be adults, most of whom have not spent a majority of their time in formal education settings. Here are some implications of adult learning theory for training. Consider how adult learning theory is incorporated into training programs. Self-concept, mutual planning and collaboration in instruction. Experience, use learner experiences as a basis for examples and applications. Readiness, develop instruction based on the learner's interests and competencies. Time perspective, immediate application of content, and orientation to learning, problem-centered instead of subject-centered. Consider how adult learning theory is incorporated into your training programs. Compared to other learning theories, information process theories give more emphasis to the internal processes that occur when training content is learned and retained. This figure shows a model of information processing. Information processing theories propose that information or messages taken in by the learner undergo several transformations in the human brain. Information processing begins when a message or stimulus, which could be a sound, smell, touch, or picture from the environment, is received by receptors like ears, nose, skin, or the eyes. The message is registered in the senses and stored in short-term memory, and then it's transferred or coded for storage in long-term memory. A search process occurs in memory, during which time a response to the message or stimulus is organized. The response generator organizes the learner's response and tells the effectors, muscles, what to do. The final link in the model is feedback from the environment. The feedback provides the learner with an evaluation of the responses given. This information can come from another person or the learner's observation of the results of his or her own action. A positive evaluation of the response provides reinforcement that the behavior is desirable and should be stored in long-term memory for use in similar situations. Transfer of training is more difficult when tasks during training are different from the work environment, known as FAR transfer. The tasks that are used during training relate to training objectives. Closed skills refer to training objectives that are linked to learning specific skills that are to be identically produced on the job. There is only one correct way to complete a task if it requires closed skills. In contrast, open skills are linked to more general learning principles. With open skills, there's not a single correct way to perform, and the learner is given some general principles to follow. Open skills are more difficult to train than closed skills because they require the trainee to not only acquire and recall general principles, but to also consider how they can be adopted and used to fit a wide range of circumstances. Three theories of transfer of training have implications for training design: the learning environment, the theory of identical elements, the stimulus generalization approach, and the cognitive theory of transfer. The theory of identical elements proposes that transfer of training occurs when what is being learned in the training session is identical to what the trainee has to perform on the job. The stimulus generalization approach suggests that the way to understand the transfer of training issue is to construct training so that the most important features or general principles are emphasized. FAR transfer refers to the trainee's ability to apply learned capabilities to the work environment, even though the work environment, like equipment, problems, and tasks, is not identical to that of the training session. The stimulus generalization approach can be seen in the design of some skill training programs which are based on social learning theory. Recall from a discussion of social learning theory that modeling, practice, feedback, and reinforcement play key roles in learning. One step in developing effective interpersonal skills training programs, as an example, is to identify key behaviors that are needed to be successful in a situation. Key behaviors refer to behaviors that can be used successfully in a wide variety of situations. The model demonstrates these key behaviors in a video, and trainees have opportunities to practice them. The key behaviors are believed to be applicable to a wide variety of situations. In fact, the practice session in this type of training requires the trainee to use the behaviors in a variety of situations that are not identical. The cognitive theory of transfer is based on the information process theory of learning. According to cognitive theory of transfer, the likelihood of transfer depends on the trainee's ability to retrieve learned capacities. This theory suggests that the likelihood of transfer is increased by providing trainees with meaningful material that enhances the chances that they will link what they encounter in the work environment to a learned capacity. Also important is providing the trainee with cognitive strategies for coding the learned capabilities in memory so that they're easily retrievable. The influence of cognitive theory is seen in training design that encourages trainees, as a part of the program, to consider potential applications of training content to their jobs. Many training programs include having trainees identify a work problem or situation and discuss the potential application of the training content. The objective refers to the purpose and expected outcome of training activities. There may be objectives for each training session as well as overall objectives for a program. Because objectives can serve as goals, trainees need to understand, accept, and be committed to achieving the training objectives for learning to occur. Training objectives based on the training needs analysis help employees understand why they need training and what they need to learn. Objectives are also useful for identifying the types of training outcomes that should be measured to evaluate a training program's effectiveness. A training objective has three components: a statement of what the employee is expected to do, a performance outcome; a statement of the quality or level of performance that is acceptable, the criterion; and a statement of the conditions under which the trainee is expected to perform the desired outcome, known as the conditions. The objective should not describe performance that cannot be observed, such as understand or know. To enhance the meaningfulness of a training content, the message should be presented using concepts, terms, and examples familiar to trainees. Also, the training context should mirror the work environment. The training context refers to the physical, intellectual, and emotional environment in which training occurs. Some successful techniques for convincing trainees that the training program context is meaningful includes telling stories about others' success in applying training content, showing how training relates to company goals and strategy, showing trainees that they can use training content ideas at work, and discussing examples or cases that remind trainees of the good and poor work they've seen. It also includes repeating the application of ideas in different contexts, presenting evidence that they will learn during training is what high-performing employees use on their jobs, and showing how the conditions that trainees face in the environment are similar to those on the job. They also include providing practice or application activities, providing hard copies or electronic access to well-organized materials, and allowing trainees to choose their practice strategy and training content presentation. Meaningful training content meets the needs of your training audience. Practice refers to physical or mental rehearsal of a task, knowledge, or skill to achieve proficiency in performing the task or skill or demonstrating the knowledge. Practice involves having the employee demonstrate the learned capacity, like cognitive strategy or verbal information, emphasized in the training objectives under conditions and performance standards specified by the objectives. Viewing examples helps learners develop a new mental model of skills which they can use in practice. Trainers need to focus not just on training content, but also on how to enable trainees to process information in a way that will facilitate learning and the use of training on the job. Before practice, trainers can do the following: provide information about the process or strategy that will result in the greatest learning. For example, let trainees in a customer service class know about the types of calls they'll receive, like irate customers or requests for information on a product or a challenge of a bill, and how to recognize such calls and how to complete them. Encourage trainees to develop a strategy, metacognition, to reflect their own learning process. Metacognition refers to individual control over one's thinking. Two ways that individuals engage in metacognition are monitoring and control. Research shows that metacognition, including self-regulation, promotes learning. Self-regulation refers to the learner's involvement with the training material and assessing their progress towards learning. Learners who engage in self-regulation likely learn more effectively because they're able to monitor their progress, identify areas needing improvement, and adjust their learning. Provide advanced organizers, outlines, text, diagrams, and graphs that helps trainees organize the information that will be presented and practiced. Help trainees set challenging mastery or learning goals. Create realistic expectations for trainees by communicating what will occur in training. When training employees in teams, communicate performance expectations and clarify the roles and responsibilities of team members. Learning will not occur if employees practice by talking about what they're expected to do. Trainees need to continue to practice even if they have been able to perform the objective several times, known as overlearning. The frequency of practice has been shown to influence learning depending on the type of task being trained. Massed practice conditions are those in which individuals practice a task continuously without resting. Massed practice also involves having trainees complete practice exercises at one time within a lesson or class rather than distributing the exercises within the lesson. In spaced practice conditions, individuals are given rest intervals within practice sessions. Spaced practice is superior to mass practice in general. Overall task complexity refers to the degree to which a task requires a number of distinct behaviors, the number of choices involved in performing the task, and the degree of uncertainty in performing the task. Mental requirements refer to the degree to which the task requires the subject to use or demonstrate mental skills or cognitive skills or abilities to perform the task. Physical requirements refers to the degree to which the task requires the person to use or demonstrate physical skills and abilities to perform and complete the task. A final issue related to practice is how much of the training should be practiced at one time. One option is that all tasks or objectives should be practiced at the same time, known as whole practice. Another option is that an objective or task should be practiced individually as soon as each is introduced in the training program, known as part practice. It is possible to best employ both whole and part practice in a training session. Trainees should have the opportunity to practice individual skills or behaviors. If the skills or behaviors introduced in a training session are related to one another, the trainee should demonstrate all of them in a practice session after they've been practiced individually. For practice to be relevant to training objectives, several conditions must be met. Practice must involve the actions emphasized in training objectives, be completed under conditions specified in those objectives, help trainees perform to meet the criteria or standards that were set, provide some means to evaluate the extent to which trainees' performance meets standards, and allow trainees to correct their mistakes. Learner-instructor interaction refers to the interaction between the learner and the expert, known as the trainer. Trainers can facilitate learning by presenting, demonstrating, and reinforcing content. Also, trainers provide support, encouragement, and feedback that are valued by most learners. Learner and structured discussions can be useful for helping learners understand content, enhance learners' self awareness and self assessment, gain an appreciation for different opinions, and implement ideas on the job. To maximize learners' critical thinking and analysis skills, discussion should go beyond instructors asking questions and learners providing answers. Learner-learner interaction refers to the interaction between learners with or without an instructor. The learner-learner interaction may be especially useful for training interpersonal skills, acquiring personal knowledge, and learning to cope with uncertainty. Communities of practice refer to groups of employees who work together, learn from each other, and develop a common understanding of how to get work done. Communities of practice can involve face-to-face or electronic interaction. The idea of community of practice suggests that learning occurs on the job as a result of social interaction. Every company has naturally occurring COPs that arise as a result of the relationships that employees develop to accomplish work and as the result of the design of the work environment. Communities of practice also take on the form of social networks, discussion boards, listservs, and other forms of computer-mediated communication in which employees communicate electronically. In doing so, each employee's knowledge can be accessed in a relatively quickly manner. It's as if employees are having a conversation with a group of experts. Communities of practice are the most effective for learning and improving work performance when managers and employees believe they contribute to the core operating processes of the company, such as engineering or quality. Despite the benefits of improved communication, a drawback to these communities is that participation is often voluntary, so some employees may not share their knowledge unless the organizational culture supports participation. Employees may receive so much information that they fail to process it, which may cause them to withdraw from the community of practice. Training administration refers to coordinating activities before, during, and after the program. Training administration involves communicating courses and programs, enrolling employees in courses, preparing and processing materials, preparing materials that will be used in instruction, arranging the facility and training room, testing the equipment that will be used, having backup equipment should equipment fail, and providing support during instruction. It further includes distributing evaluation materials, facilitating communications between trainer and trainees during and after training, and recording course completion in the trainees' training records or personnel files. Good coordination ensures that trainees are not distracted by events such as an uncomfortable room or poorly organized materials that could interfere with learning. Books, speakers, handouts, and videotapes need to be prepared. Any necessary arrangements to secure rooms and equipment such as DVD players should be made. The physical arrangement of the training room should complement the training technique.